Now, in other news this morning, a much-anticipated nationwide ceasefire in Syria has been brokered by Russia and Turkey. It came into effect on Thursday at midnight, Damascus time. The deal does represent a major breakthrough and gives hope for a solution to the long-running Syrian crisis. The Russian Defence Minister says that 7 key opposition groups have vowed to join the truce. Groups that do not abide by the ceasefire will be considered terrorists. Russia and Turkey have agreed to monitor and assist the process, and it is hoped the agreement will pave the way for future peace talks and a political process in Syria.
What happened this morning is what we've all spent a long time waiting and working for. 3 documents were signed. The first was signed by the Syrian government and the Syrian opposition to end hostilities in the Syrian Arab Republic. The second, complex measures to monitor the ceasefire. The third document is a declaration of intention for organizing peace talks.
There's still a lot of confusion about which rebel factions actually agreed to respect this ceasefire agreement. An official for the Syrian National Coalition welcomed the ceasefire deal. On the other hand, one of the most powerful rebel factions that's supposed to be included in this agreement, also the most extreme rebel faction, Ahrar Al-Sham, one of their spokespeople said that they're skeptical about the ceasefire deal, so not clear yet whether they are going to sign up to it. The Syrian army released a statement saying that they are ready to implement the ceasefire, they're ready to respect it, they're going to cease all of their military operations nationwide except military operations against groups excluded from the ceasefire deal, which of course is ISIL and Al-Qaeda's branch in Syria, Faylaq Al-Sham, and their affiliates. The Syrian President Bashar al-Assad said that this ceasefire agreement for the first time ever lays a durable and promising groundwork for subsequent constitutional reform. Now it almost sounds there like he's saying that if this ceasefire holds, then at those upcoming talks in Astana and perhaps further on in Geneva, then the Syrian government is willing to negotiate reform and perhaps even power sharing, but it remains to see what he actually means by that.
RT's Lizzie Phelan there. Well, the cessation deal does include major regional powers. However, the current US administration, which had previously been considered a key player in any Syrian settlement, is not expected to participate. The so-called Troika coalition, including Russia, Iran and Turkey, is now taking the initiative in the Syrian peace process. Murad Gazdiev has more on that.
John Kerry and Sergey Lavrov, for a while there, they were inseparable, visiting each other, closeting themselves away in Geneva for hours, for days at a time, trying to solve the world's problems. They had their moments, but when it came to Syria, it was abject failure. Whether it was arguing and blaming each other about an aid convoy attack, the reasons for a ceasefire failure, or the United States accidentally bombing Syrian troops, they just couldn't find a common position, common ground. And eventually, Russia had enough.
As for Jabhat al-Nusra, the US not only doesn't touch it, but during all our discussions, they tried in every way to formulate agreements so al-Nusra was not attacked. Of course, we can't accept that, because al-Nusra is a terrorist organization, as admitted by the United Nations, the US, Russia, and other countries.
Time to switch things around, mix things up. Enter the Troika, not the likeliest of A-teams, Iran, Russia and Turkey, but certainly one that gets things done. The Aleppo evacuation, thousands of lives saved, the city spared devastation. The ceasefire effort in Syria, the biggest ceasefire, theoretically, that the civil war has ever seen. Now they've got plans for a peace settlement, even a roadmap. They're now doing what the United States promised to do for years and finally separate the radical jihadists from the moderate opposition.
During the last 2 months, we spent most of the time developing maps to show where the main opposition groups could be divided. Information we had earlier requested from the United States.
The United States just couldn't do it. They blamed Russia, they blamed Assad, they blamed the conditions. The Friends of Syria failed. The ISSG, International Syria Support Group, failed. The talks in Geneva failed. The Troika, the new Syrian coalition, is getting things done. They now have plans to expand, to grow, inviting a whole host of new nations, and noticeably absent among them is the United States, and that must not sit well with Washington. Cue the timing of new sanctions. On the same day that Russia, Iran and Turkey agree to this huge new ceasefire without so much as telling the United States, you have new sanctions leveled against Russia.
We've also heard from several experts on the ceasefire who do say that Washington has been sidelined in Syria.
What you see in the Middle East now is a totally new alliance occurring to solve those problems, or at least attempt to solve the major issues in the Middle East. So now you've had Turkey, you have Russia, and you have Iran, the three major players in that area. So I think from the standpoint of the Obama administration, they're trying to develop some kind of legacy for President Obama to look like he's tough and has some kind of strategy that will help the situation in the Middle East. And of course, that doesn't exist. So President Trump will come in and he will change a lot of things.
There's many reasons as to why US policy has failed in Syria. First of all, the main components of the policy has been to achieve regime change, and that's been something which Obama has pursued since the first day of the Syria crisis. It's something which has allied them with lots of radical groups in Syria. There isn't a US policy in Syria. There's a vacuum, and whatever policy there has been, it's been incoherent. It hasn't had the cohesion of a superpower state policy within the Middle East. And what you can see in Syria now is the absence of any role for the United States of America